Hello, everybody. Today's video is about the late Jimi Hendrix. He was a pioneer with his guitar techniques and psychedelic style, even how he wrote and labeled his songs. His music represented the feel of the late 60s and 70s. He influenced musicians years after his death. His first album, Are You Experienced, is in the Library of Congress. What exactly made his music different? Well, most young musicians practice by doing cover songs of their favorite artists, and he did the same as well. But what a lot of people didn't know was that he studied the sounds around him and he would imitate them with his guitar. Hendrix's childhood was not the greatest. He witnessed and experienced things that no child should ever have to go through. Being born to a teen mom and parents who abused alcohol. Watching his siblings being awarded to the state, they were in the house today and gone tomorrow. Not being allowed to attend his mother's funeral. None of this affected his talent, but it did affect his life. Welcome to the House of Nostalgia. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video. It would help the channel a lot. In the earlier part of this video, I will be calling Jimi by his first name, so as not to get him mixed up with his father. After that, I will be referring to him by using his last name. Jimi Hendrix was born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November the 27th, 1942 in Seattle, Washington. His father, James Al Hendrix, later changed his son's name to James Marshall Hendrix. His mother's name was Lucille, and she was 17 when she gave birth to Jimi. She looked very young. There's a picture of her and Jimi on the internet when he was just a baby. She worked as a waitress during the majority of her pregnancy. Lucy had to deal with pressure from her parents because she was their youngest child and didn't finish high school, and they wanted better for her. Al was 6 years older than her and was not present for Jimi's birth because he was in the military at the time. I find it strange that his father's name was listed on Jimi's website but not his mother's. Al and Lucille had 3 children together that Al claimed, but there were more children who ended up in the foster care system. They had a tumultuous marriage, very toxic. She eventually walked out on the family and later remarried. She died in her early 30s. Jimi's childhood was an awful experience. He had a hard life, moving around to different relatives and watching his siblings go into the foster care system because of the actions of his parents and their alcohol addiction. He found solace in music, listening to some of the greats in blues and early rock and roll as a teen. His first instrument was an old one-string ukulele that his father gave him. His father eventually bought him a $5 acoustic guitar, and he began teaching himself how to play it. He was around the age of 15. Hendrix listened to Robert Johnson, B.B. King, Ray Charles, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, and T-Bone Walker, and he loved them all. Hendrix was expelled from school. He didn't get the chance to graduate, and he ended up working with his father for a while doing gardening. He started getting in trouble with the law and was sentenced to jail a couple of times for theft before joining the military. Hendrix wanted to be a paratrooper and earn a Screaming Eagle patch while in the military. That was his goal. He was called a weirdo while in the military, and that was because of his interest in music. He would walk around playing invisible guitars and making guitar sounds when he could have just used one of the guitars they had on base. Hendrix claimed that the teasing he received on bass didn't bother him. He was able to hear music and the sounds around him, and he eventually asked his father to send his guitar, which he named Betty Jean Morgan. The sounds of airplanes lifting off the ground, the wind, and the firing range, he would imitate those sounds and put them into music. Hendrix met another serviceman named Billy Cox, and they started performing together in local clubs and called themselves the King Casuals. Hendrix received his Screaming Eagle patch, and that's what he wanted. He no longer had much interest in the military. His love for music took over. Hendrix was given an honorable discharge in June of 1962 after being in the service for a year and 1 month. He was able to pursue music full time. He started playing as a sessions musician while traveling the Chitlin circuit. This was during the time he got to perform as a backing musician for popular R&B, blues, and soul artists. The pay was not good and they had a lot of rules to follow. He didn't stay long. In 1964, he did accept the job backing the Isley Brothers, and I don't blame them. He recorded the song Testify with them before moving on to Little Richard's band and recorded with him the same year. Richard wasn't doing much in music around this time, and there wasn't much for him to learn other than how to entertain the audience, and Little Richard was good at that. Hendrix took all of that in. However, they didn't get along very well because Richard ran a tight ship. You were not going to upstage him, and that is what he felt Hendrix was trying to do, from Hendrix's style of dress to the way he played on stage. Little Richard wasn't having it, so he was fired. Hendrix was becoming an exceptional guitarist. His biggest problem was boredom. He got bored of a routine, but he learned a lot from some of his favorites like Steve Cropper of Booker T and the MGs. Albert King, who was known as the Velvet Bulldozer. King was a left-handed guitarist like Hendrix. He taught Hendrix how he fingered the guitar and how he moved the strings horizontally instead of vertically. He started opening up and taking in a lot from blues artists like Ike Turner, the chess recording artist Muddy Waters and his electric band, learning guitar tricks from watching T-Bone Walker, the same as the British bands did. He was starting to realize that he was around some of the greatest guitar players and performers. Let's not forget other recording artists like the Supremes, Wilson Pickett, B.B. King, and Solomon Burke. If you can name them, he backed them. These are the tools that he used to become so successful. The British artists were learning the same tools, just in a different way. He took these tools and sought a different sound of music, which was smart, because I've been saying in all of my other blues videos that blues was getting stale around the mid to late 60s. Folk music was taking over, R&B was forming a different sound. This is what saved the Isley Brothers, and he was looking for a space for his music he wanted to play. He formed a band named Jimmy James and the Blue Flame. He needed a band to perform at his new residence at Cafe Wa in Greenwich Village. This was in 1966. While performing, Chaz Chandler, who was the bassist for the group The Animals, was doing his farewell performances with the band when he happened to catch one of Hendrix's shows. Michael Jeffries, who was the manager of The Animals, suggested he change his name back to Jimmy, shortened it, and named his band the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Jimi Hendrix and the Experience started performing around Britain and showcasing his music to some of the British musical greats like Pete Townsend, Eric Clapton, Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, and a few others. He was amazed that they came out to watch him perform. He released his first album, Are You Experienced, August 27, 1967. It went to number 2 in the UK and number 5 in the US. That album went 5 times platinum. Not sure if it was at the time or over the years, but all the albums he recorded went multi-platinum. The biggest hits on this album were Purple Haze, Hey Joe, Are You Experienced, and The Wind Cries Mary. The music that he recorded was groundbreaking. It was. It was the blueprint of rock music, not rock and roll. That belongs to the artists of the late 40s and 50s that he studied. This was like Muddy Waters' electric band for the new generation. This was the same sound that we heard from the majority of rock bands after that, at least until 1977. Every time we get close to another decade, the music changes. However, this sound never changed, it was set in stone. His second album, Axis Bold as Love, was released in the same year, and Electric Ladyland was released in 1968, which was his most successful LP. Hendrix's 1969 Woodstock performance was one for the history books. The festival at one time had garnered up to 400,000 people in attendance, but by him choosing to close the show that Monday, it was estimated to be around 30,000 left, and they were part of history. He creatively played the Star-Spangled Banner in a way that had never been played before. He made his guitar sound like bombs going off in a war battle. The Vietnam War was still going on, so this was touching to the American people. This also goes back to him imitating certain sounds on his guitar that he learned in the military. Now, it was alleged that Hendrix was beginning to submerge himself into drugs. They say he was taking about 8 different drugs with alcohol included. And they also said that all of this seemed to bring on a mean, violent, and destructive side to Hendrix that didn't sit well with his friends. Now, most of us know that Hendrix passed away just a few years after his success. He died on September the 18th, 1970 to be exact, from asphyxiation. But what I didn't know until making this video was that none of those drugs were in his system when he died. I found his death to be strange and suspicious. Out of all the drugs that he allegedly took, there was only barbiturates, which is an antidepressant drug, found in his system. Now, I do understand that if you take too much, it can cause you to overdose. But, I read that he was breathing when the ambulance arrived, but was unconscious and pronounced dead at the hospital. Well, when did the asphyxiation happen? There was not enough evidence to give a clear picture of how all this got to the point of death. This was very sad, all that talent, and he was just 27 years of age. What Jimi Hendrix did with music was revolutionary, absolutely. And this brought on a lot of jealousy and criticism as well as praise in Britain. Honestly, that's to be expected in a situation like that. You had artists coming out saying they learned how to do this first, they tore up their instruments first. Tearing up his instrument was not his idea at first. He tore it up by slamming it on the stage, trying to keep his fans from pulling him off the stage. It got a lot of attention, so he continued because after the first time, the audience expected it. I do believe that his childhood had a serious effect on him, especially his behavior while intoxicated. Now, I could have spoke more on that, but I did give you an idea. I'm not a psychiatrist, but you can take a person with a good childhood. If one thing bad happened, they never forgot it. I don't care if it was 50 years ago. That one bad incident could define the rest of their life. Just imagine what it would be like dealing with that your whole childhood. Do you all think that his death was suspicious? I did. Be sure to tell me what you know about Hendrix down in the comment section. I would love to hear what you know about him. And I would like to thank you guys so much for watching my video on Mr. Jimi Hendrix.